How do you get clients? How do you even start this weird ass career that we've picked?
Right. Just a small question. Like we could cover that very easily, right? In no time at all. So I think the experience that I have had is what a lot of your directors have said over the past many episodes that you've done, which is that it's all about relationships. So I came into the industry in kind of an interesting way. I was an actor first. So I came up through like working in theater and working as a playwright. And then I was doing extra work in the background of like the network shows that we're shooting here in Chicago. And that was when I started looking around and asking myself, like, is this the role I really want to be in? Like, do I want to be acting on this set or do I want to have more creative leadership here and more of a voice? And so I just kind of opened my eyes and my ears and I looked around and I saw how the people on set were conducting themselves. I started asking a lot of questions and I just started telling anybody who would listen, like, I want to work on the creative leadership side of film production. From there, I started working in the corporate world, and that was kind of my in. So I think there's a lot of like very interesting video production happening in the corporate side of things right now, especially on social media. And so that's been my kind of path into the industry and paying my bills,
I
making
actually
content.
I talk to directors about this all the time. Like corporate work is not the sexy work, but it is the work that pays, and it is
Yes.
the work that's readily available for you to go out and get the job today. It's there for you to create jobs. One of the things I teach in the working director is how you actually can go to business owners and just pitch them basically on making videos for them. And that's how you get a lot of work. It's not sitting around on your couch hoping that, Universal's going to call you tomorrow to do the movie of your dreams. That's not how you become a working director. If it is, good luck. I mean, you've won the lottery if that's happening.
Right.
So when you want to go out and get clients now in your career, like if you're, there's a lull and nothing's happening, what exactly do you have measures you take to get things moving, or have you just found that people are always referring you at this point? So
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's interesting, right? Because everybody who's working as a director kind of has to cobble together an income differently. So I know directors who are doing 4 projects a year and like they work freelance on those and that's how they pay all their bills. Personally, I do in-house corporate work. So I work a salary job in social media content creation. I get to do directing through that job a lot of the time. And then I get my freelance directing gigs through my relationships, oftentimes through the people I meet in those corporate settings. So for example, when I directed for Claire's, I met the producer who brought me onto that gig through a corporate job that I was working in-house on a salary. So it really is, you can't discount the corporate work because you're meeting the most interesting people through that work, and a lot of really talented people through that work too, because the corporations have the big bucks.
yeah, and it's always nice when you aren't worried about. So I mean, you're always going to have a budget to deal with, but you're not. It's not like when you're doing your own indie film. Like we just did one last month where there was never enough time, never enough money. When you're in the corporate world, you're up front, like, here's how much money we need to do this. And then you go do that. It's a much nicer system. And I think if directors would get behind that, they realize that they're working more and they're still enjoying themselves because they are still directing. While on the side,
Yeah.
they can be doing their passion projects.
Well, and just the access to equipment too. Like through my corporate gigs, I've met folks at Shure. I've met people who can hook me up with access to cameras and rigging that I never would have access to, or I'd have to pay for out of a production budget if I wasn't working on a corporate contract.
Yeah, it's great. So you've done, if I remember correctly, you've done music videos as well, correct?
Not yet. That's actually on the list for me. So I'd love to do a music video, but the majority of my work is actually in short form documentary and narrative storytelling. So I've worked with a lot of like hospitals and health systems, and it's truly is like the scariest and often most dramatic time in a person's life when they're going through like a hospitalizing incident. And so everyone that's involved in that storytelling is sort of at that climactic moment. It's really fascinating for me. And so I've been able to work on the corporate side, doing the marketing for these hospitals, telling the stories to kind of bring to life what they're doing there, but then also hone my storytelling skills by exploring these really emotional, like musical narratives, which has been cool.
I want to point out what you just said, because this is something that also Jason Satterlin had said when we talked to him about these kind of gigs. Y'all, she's talking about these sort of non-exciting, for lack of a better word, job where she's honing her skills as an emotional storyteller that then transfers in to the feature narrative work. So you've got to take every little job, and instead of being like, "Ugh, I guess I'll take this job that doesn't maybe pay as much as I want, or it's with a dentist, it's so boring," and go, "What can I learn from this moment? What shots can I try to do that maybe I don't ever get to do normally?" You can take all these things as opportunities. Um, let's talk a little bit more though about that, how you've transitioned some of that into narrative storytelling using social media, because that
Yeah.
is one thing that I feel like every single person who's watching, no matter what your job is, and I'm including myself in that, we are terrible at social media and telling our story on social media. So talk to us about how you approach, say, TikTok, for instance. If you can maybe use a corporate client example, or maybe it's an example of how you've done your own career stuff.
For sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I have a bit of a soapbox when it comes to social media content creation because I think, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if you had one creative who was masterminding the concept, bringing together everyone who's making the project, producing that, going into production on it, editing it, and then distributing it, what would you call that person? A director, a creative director. And today, especially when it's a millennial content creator, especially when it's a Gen Z content creator, we call them content creators. I don't know what a content creator is. I know what a creative director is and what a director is. And so that's sort of important to me when we talk about social media. Don't pitch yourself as a content creator. You'll make less money and you'll be undervalued. Pitch yourself as a director and a creative director because you'll get access to bigger budgets. You'll get to do more exciting creative things because you'll have more trust with that title. And, it's more reflective of the actual work that you're doing.
Yeah, and I also feel like when I'm telling filmmakers go out to these companies and pitch, doing videos for them, you never say I'm a videographer.
Right.
I always say you provide production services, you do video services, you have a production company. You always make it sound bigger than maybe you feel like you are at this moment in your career. But law of attraction, you say it, it becomes it, right? There's been so many jobs that I have gotten in the past just by being like, yeah, my production company can handle that. Well, I'm the only person in my production company, but I have amazing
Exactly.
DPs and gaffers and grips and sound, and I have all these people. So depending on the job and the rates, I can call these people. So it doesn't matter if you actually have some established place where people are showing up. That's not what it's about. It's about, can you handle the work and can you deliver on time and on budget and deliver a quality project?
Right. And do you have the vision? Because in working in these corporate settings, we have a lot of folks who are specialists and folks who are editors and who are really great at those specialized skills. But what's rare are those people with the vision and the storytelling acumen that we learn from being, indie film storytellers and doing our features and our more narrative work. And that's really valued in corporate America, I found. And I'll share, one social media experience that was very cool was when I was at Northwestern Medicine. I was in-house on their creative team. And I built a lot of trust with their creative directors. So they would ask me to come in and direct projects oftentimes. So I was working with the transplant team and we identified a woman on social media whose lifelong dream was to donate her kidney. And she was already documenting this on her TikTok. So I reached out to this woman and I asked her, can we follow you? Could we go through this process with you? So this wasn't an organizational priority at the time. It wasn't like NM came to me and said, do a big video about the transplant program. I came to them with this pitch because I'd found an interesting character and I wanted to tell this story. And I knew that they had the money to make it happen. And because I worked there, I had access that nobody else had to everything behind the scenes around this storytelling. So that's the end result of that was one of my favorite short documentary films that I ever made. We were able to, the level of production we were able to bring to it was only possible because I did it in-house while working at the hospital. I don't know that I could have told that story if I were, just a person on my own trying to break into the walls of the hospital and say, let me direct this thing.
I got chills hearing that because that is exactly what I try to teach. And filmmakers, don't get thrown off by the fact that she already worked at the hospital. You could still take that story idea and go to somebody who had the money and the interest to make it and just say, here, I have the story rights. I have this whole vision. We need this much budget, or it's all about how you approach and having that sort of like, I can do this. I'm confident and I've got your back. I think that can get you any job, especially when you're trying to pitch these stories. But I love that you went to social media and found somebody who already was documenting it. There's already sort of a following happening. So that helps too. I've never actually thought to do that, to pick a
Yeah.
pre story, I guess.
Well, that's a trend I see in documentary storytelling right now too. Like if we look at the Bama Rush documentary, like 40% of the B-roll in that documentary was from TikTok. And so I think more and more we're seeing like the true authentic feeling storytelling is happening on social media in these ways. And so as filmmakers, it's our responsibility to like respond to this new digital storytelling environment by incorporating it into the work that we're doing. So like what really interests me about the social media environment too is pairing like the low value UGC, stuff that users are creating shot on an iPhone with the higher production stuff that we can do on the cinema cameras. And like, what does that world kind of look like?
This is great. I want to remind everybody that you can ask us questions in the chat. We would love to answer your questions. We have about 20 minutes left, so get them in. Let's talk through. I know I kind of touched on it, but I really want to talk through a TikTok story, just as an example. It could be Instagram, whatever. But so let's say for our filmmakers, they want to do a story on themselves. They want to put themselves in the best light as a filmmaker. So you, as a director, as the creative who now has this job, what would you tell them? Is there any advice you would give, or first thoughts, even? Because I know this is it's always based on who the person is. Maybe use yourself as an example. But what's the kind of stuff you would be posting regularly to show that you're a confident filmmaker that people should be hiring?
Oh yes, so that's like the personal brand stuff, yeah. And so, like, what's interesting is my biggest social following is on TikTok, where I have over 40,000 followers right now. It's February of 2024, so hopefully more soon. But that platform's the biggest for me, and I blew up there because I posted a video of myself doing an onstage quick change back when I was an actor. It was not related to directing, right? It was pure viral content. But because I'm a good storyteller and a great editor, I put it together and told the story of what was happening in that video clip in such a smart way that it attracted a lot of attention and a lot of followers. And then those people stuck around when I explained to them what I do as a filmmaker and as a storyteller and my ideas about digital media. So I think that there's an idea that you have to niche down or you have to start every TikTok with, I'm a director and here's what I do. I,
Right.
I tend to swipe right past those videos because they're not providing immediate value. So on TikTok, the first 3 to 5 seconds are the most valuable time in your video. So if you're not using that time to, I call it a thumb stopping hook, right? To stop that scroll, then you're not doing TikTok right. And my best advice for people posting on TikTok is when you have a video that you're done with and you think it's great and you're ready to post it, go sit on TikTok for 10 minutes and just scroll and watch other people's videos and then watch yours. And you'll see really quickly whether or not it fits or it doesn't. And you'll know if people are responding. TikTok's really cool too. Like I think an advantage for me as a director coming up through social media content creation is you get instant feedback on everything. And especially in the TikTok environment, it can go so well with millions and millions of views, or it can go so poorly with like 200. And so you know instantly if you're creating content and telling a story that people are responding to, or if you need to go back and retool.
Yeah, I feel like there's the one thing I'll point out that Katie just said is there's a personalized nature that I feel like you've got to be personal, but of course not. It's like I always say with like Facebook back when it was like we don't care what you ate for lunch, but we do care that you bought this new Megatron toy because it shows your personality, right? So
Yeah.
finding that personalized thing, I actually want to now go back and I wish I'd have known this about this TikTok video because I would show it right now. I'm gonna go back and find this quick change video to see it
Yes, it
because
has 11 million views. So,
wow,
I mean, did something right.
I just love, and I love that you are so confident to say, because I'm a good storyteller, because I know how to tell a story. And that is something that I feel like we grow up in this sort of like we're supposed to be humble world. And that really hurts when you're trying to get jobs. You have to go into any job as a director, whether you're pitching for the company to hire you, whether you're going to like I've interviewed for feature film jobs where I just was like, I'm the right person. I don't know what else.
Yeah.
Why would you pick anybody else? Like,
I mean, it's
it's not cocky. It's not ego. It's just like in my mind, I just feel like I'm so right for this. It doesn't mean you're
yeah.
always going to get the job, but that is the way to do it.
I mean, it's just the facts. Like, I don't feel like I'm bragging when I explain to someone that I, have a history of going viral with every client that I've worked with. I'm not bragging when I say I have 15 million views on TikTok because I do, like any man director would walk into a room and say, here are my credentials. And I think as women directors, especially, we shouldn't be afraid to say the exact same stuff and not feel bad about it.
For sure. I just wrote note, hire Katie. See, look, I'm like, I'm going to hire her. I
Cool.
have
Let's
a
do
great
it.
question from Shut the Fill Up. Great name. Uh, any breaking the ice tips on approaching an artist, a small business organization about wanting to shoot material for them? This is a great, great question. And I love that
Yeah.
you put an artist, because I do think that one of the things, I'll let Katie give her intake, but one of the things I always teach is your social media network is bigger than you think. So one of the easiest things you can do right now is go on your Facebook and say, hey, my production company is trying to grow our reel. So we're willing to do, 3 small videos or 3 music videos for cost. Now they don't need to know that cost could be $5,000, and that's how much it costs. It could be $200. That's your decision. But you basically just go, I'm looking for these artists. Or maybe you want to do 2 free because you don't have any. We're willing to do 2 music videos for free. And then it's such a great way to get people to start emailing you and saying, I have a band, and then who knows where that leads. You got to just put out in your network. Tell everybody hey, I'm looking for music videos. I want to shoot music videos. They need to know. If people don't know what you're looking for, nobody knows to think of you when that thing comes up. Now, as far as approaching them cold, Katie, do you have any advice on like walking into, let's say a small business, and you approach them cold about wanting to shoot something for them? Because you
Yeah.
obviously did that really well with the video you did.
Right, with Northwestern. Well, I think it helps to have, I'm not usually going in cold. Like I have a person on the inside usually. So, and it's interesting you bring up getting work through social media too, because as I'm thinking about it, most of the work that I've gotten, if it hasn't been through work that I'm doing and, making relationships on set and through the project, it's been through social media, or through college. And so, when I think about like approaching an organization about doing a video for them, if I know somebody, even if they're not related to like the marketing team, if they're like a salesperson, or if they're an admin, having that like trust that like, hey, my friend is going to come in to pitch, like gives you that extra bit of credibility before you even pitch. That helps somehow. I don't know how to describe it, but they just like have that established trust with you. And then with other artists that I'm working with, this is where the corporate work has really helped. Where like if there's a new audio person I want to work with, or a cinematographer whose work that I've discovered on Instagram and I really love, I can usually pay them to come in and work for me at the corporate level. And so they can get a nice corporate paycheck, and we can kind of get used to each other and how we like to work before we take that step of working on an indie project together where the financing is maybe a little bit more complicated, or one of us is working for free, or we're trading work. Chicago is really cool because a lot of people will trade work. So we'll bring in folks for corporate work, and you work on the corporate project, and then you can go off and work together on indie films together and build those relationships. Or if you do audio on my film, I'll do light on your film. It's a lot of that trading off. And then sometimes, like with Second City, I was working with a film production company called Make It Up Media here in Chicago. And those were all Second City actors. And so when I went to post stuff for Second City or work with other people at Second City, I already knew a lot of people like in that network. I already had, actors from Rejectress in my shorts. And so I had built that trust within like their peers in the industry, that they sort of knew like we were all kind of friends with each other. And so there was more trust there when I pitched.
I love it. That's great. This is a very cool thing that I think we're about to see on Waves. So John posted Katie's viral TikTok, and it's allowing me to click it and show on stream.
Ooh,
Let's see what
cool.
happens. I won't show the whole thing unless it's short. Is it short?
It's over a minute. I think it's under 2 minutes.
All right, I'll show you just the first part.
Yeah. You'll have to go to my TikTok to watch the whole thing.
This works. Oh no, that did not work. I thought for sure it was going to show. Never mind. Wave was about to blow my mind, and it didn't.
Go to @mkatihunter on TikTok, and it's
There you
pinned
go.
right on my profile.
Another tip on breaking the ice, 'cause I do think it's always better to have any kind of friend. A friend is coming in, whatever. If you know somebody, it's always better. But if you are going cold, I always say pick something you already do. So say you visit the same bookstore every week, or you have a chiropractor who knows you really well. You go to your chiropractor and say, look, I'm looking to add more commercials to my company's reel. Have you ever thought about making a commercial? And that could start a conversation, because you already have sort of a warm opening because you've talked to them. But let's say you've never been in a store, but you want to do a record store. Just go into there and start talking about, talk to the owners. Like, how are you guys doing? Like, you've been here forever. How does this work? How's business? I love that you do this and that. Start establishing that rapport. Don't ask in the first thing to make a video for them. You could say that, you are a director, you do have a production company if you want, but it's about establishing that rapport. And then the next time you go in, you can then do I was thinking about you guys, and I really could not stop thinking about this commercial idea for you. You guys ever thought about doing a commercial? So you already have a little bit of rapport. I find those work the best. It's never easy. It's never easy to go in cold. I know, but it works. And
Yeah.
also remember that a no has never killed anybody. Okay, you can get, every time you get a no, instead of letting it you'll be like you've been rejected, just be like, great, I'm one step closer to my yes. It's
Right. That's the good training from acting, right? Like auditioning for a million things and getting rejected over and over. Like I can pitch and get rejected and I'm like, no problem. It slides
And
right
it just
off.
has nothing to, that's same as when you're asking for someone to hire you as a filmmaker. Has nothing to do with you. It's just
Right.
maybe they don't understand what their video before. Maybe they don't understand where their money would come from to shoot it. You've no idea. Maybe you gave them the idea for a video and then they realize their cousin is a videographer, so they're gonna go with their cousin. Just have no idea.
Right. Yeah. Or like, especially with TikTok, like people really don't know what they're doing. Even though the platform's been around for so long now, even the big brands are like shooting things on cinema cameras that aren't performing. They need to be shooting on iPhones. Right. And so it's like, when I'm pitching cold to people like that, right? Like TikTok accounts, I can just come in and say, look, I see you have a TikTok account and you don't have the numbers. I do. Like, would you like to get these numbers? Like, come and work with me. So it's like, it comes back to like that proof thing, like I feel more confident if I'm pitching with somebody, I don't have an ally in the room already. Like I just come with a lot of evidence. Like I'm presenting the case for
No,
why you ought to hire me.
for sure. Nothing speaks more to people than numbers, whether it's
Right.
money that you've made or number, how high your following is. So if anybody in this, watching this now or listening on the podcast decides they really want help with their TikTok, are you like, do people hire you to consult for that and help them with that? I know you said
Yeah.
you're corporate focus, but
Absolutely, yeah. So I have my corporate in-house gig at the hospital, and then I run my own production company, Space Camp Productions. And so that is where I do all my freelance work through and my directing work through. So on social media, I ran the TikTok for the Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago for their channel launch last year, which was very cool. And they reached out to me through a work colleague at Northwestern. So they said, we need somebody who's great at TikTok. I had launched Northwestern's TikTok channel with great success. And so the zoo, when they looked for a TikTok expert, were told, go to Katie Hunter. So that's kind of like how the TikTok ball has gotten rolling. And the same thing happened with, I have an MMA fighter right now who's interested in building her TikTok presence. And that was through somebody at my corporate job said, hey, I have a friend who wants to start a TikTok. You're the expert at this. I've seen what you do. Can you come work with her? What would that look like? So I don't, I kind of do like custom packages for everybody depending on what they need. Like influencers need really different things than big brands. But yeah, I mean, I've built out packages for like 2-day TikTok trainings for people to come in and be like, look, you're going to get the boot camp. And I've also done like long-term contracts where I'm sort of like their director in-house or creative director in-house for their channel for a year or however long they need me to kind of get them booted up and started. So yeah, it's a mix of different things in the social media world, just kind of whatever people need.
I would like to make a recommendation to filmmakers watching. I would say one, try to get. Actually, I'm going to talk to Katie offline about trying to get her to do a 2-day boot camp for Black Magic. So we'll get back
Yeah.
to that. But I think hiring Katie to teach what she knows about this TikTok and going viral and making the videos and what works and doesn't work would be a great investment for anybody, because then you can take this information and go do it for other people. And now you're doing exactly what she's doing. You're getting hired to go be the director, production company for businesses, influencers, etc. And there's no better way to be a working director than to have clients, people who want to hire you. We have a question here that's basically, do you have any advice for writer director, and they're getting their scripts in front of the right person, the producer? And the reason I don't teach that, which we can touch on, but the reason we don't teach that is because that is not how you become a working director. You become a working director by being proactive and going out and working. And every feature film I've gotten is because I was working, doing other things, and got referred to it somehow or another. It was never because, except for the last ones that got taken away during the pandemic. I did apply to those, but normally you don't just apply. You don't, it's not someone else taking your script. It's you getting referred by other people that you've worked with. How do you become a working director? You go work. And that's these unsexy jobs that we're talking about that you
It's
make
true.
sexy.
Yeah, and it's like it's not like I'm coming up with my passion project and pitching it to people. It's that I hear about work and I find my passion in that work. And I choose to do the project because I have the passion. I was on a panel with Dave Pasquizzi at IO for my web series Rideshare, which was like an improvised comedy show about like Lyft and Uber drivers. It was wild. But Dave Pasquizzi said on that show that when he picks projects, he says people, project, and pay, and you have to have 2 out of 3. So is the pay good? Are the people good? And is the project good? And if you don't have 2 out of 3, then I'm probably not going to work on that project.
I think that's a great rule to follow. But I would even go further to say, I don't care how good the pay is. If the people suck, I'm out. And I've learned that the hard way. We have about 5 minutes left. So if you guys have any more questions, bring them in. But I will touch on that answer for you when you asked about how to get the scripts in front of the right people. Again, it just goes back to networking. The people have to know you. I get submitted, I'm sure you do, Katie, as well. Just random people email all the time. Here's my script. And I'm like, yes, and
Right. What do you want me to do? I'll read it, but like that's coverage. Like I don't know what you want.
like, I don't have time to read it. And the
Yeah.
thing is, unless I'm actively looking, even when I'm actively looking, don't submit the thriller. You didn't find out anything about me. So you're submitting me a thriller. It makes me show you didn't look at my production company, you didn't look at me up or anything. So you need to know who you're trying to get to see that. This goes for getting work as well when you're trying to get clients. Like, who are you talking to? What do they care about? What are their passions? And then that's who you go after. And that's who you make friends with. And yes, you make friends with the people that you want to read your script, and don't ask your friend to read your script. Instead, you make friends until they go, let me read your script. I'd love to read your script. Now, there are people out there who will say, Jen, that's weenie and you should just make the bold ask. And those people have had success with the bold ask. I find the bold ask turns people off more than it will help you. Katie, maybe you've had different experience with that.
I mean, I find if somebody's sending me their script, in that we're usually paying to make it. You know what I mean? And I'm usually not just directing; I'm helping them source a producer, and I'm having to do all this other stuff. So yeah, my preferred way is like, let's go get a drink and talk about a cool idea that you have, and let's expand on that idea together and talk about the people that we mutually know in our network who could bring that idea to life. Like when you send me a script, you're like locked into something, and like you've already thought of this whole world, and like I don't really have. I don't know, like you have already made a lot of decisions at that point. And maybe we haven't worked together before and I don't know you very well. And so like, I don't have a way in, but if we just chat for a while and to kind of learn about each other and learn about what we're interested in, we might come up with something even better or cooler, ways to expand on that story. And that's what would really interest me in working on the project.
I love that point. And I want to sort of punch home the fact that everybody you're sending your script to probably already has 6 scripts in the pipeline they're trying to get done that are theirs. So why yours? You have to always remember why yours, and what are you going to do to convince me that yours is the one, and not, oh, but the story's so unique, because it's probably not. And even though it may be amazing and maybe the best script, maybe an Oscar winner, but telling me the story's different is not going to be it. Like there has to be some more to it. Okay, we're almost out of time, but I want to get to this question because it is a good question that I'm asked a lot. Barack, he says, how do you do rates for your gigs? I have a very easy way for new filmmakers to figure that out. But Katie, what do you do? When you're not doing the corporate, because obviously corporate comes with a paycheck. How do you price out gigs, your rate as a director?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So first, I asked all my friends what they were charging to do different things. And working in-house, we hire a lot of freelancers. So I got to see a lot of rate cards. So like, what's a DP charging with this amount of experience? What's a sound person charging with that amount of experience? So I got a sense of scale for what was going on in my region in Chicago for this type of production. So that helped me ballpark it. But then for each project, I tend to look at the size of the organization. I'll ask around, like if I know a producer on it, if they know the overall budget for the project, if that's already established. Like with Claire's, I said, like I was asking, like, how much is the creative director? Do you know their day rate? Like kind of trying to understand and ask people I know how much are other people being paid to get an idea of the budget for the whole project. With Porchlight, they were a really small theater company in Chicago. And like here in Chicago, the storefront community, storefront theater was huge before the pandemic, but it got devastated when we all shut down for 2 years. So coming back online has been really hard for them. And so I knew going into pitching a docuseries for this theater company that they wouldn't have a lot of money to spend on it. So I really judiciously thought about my own rates and the budget I would need to bring the project to life and kind of like adjusted things on both sides because I knew that this was like a passion project for me. It was a people project for me. So I knew I could move on the pay a little bit. And there were sometimes, if there's certain production things I want to do on a project, I will lower my directing rate to get more budget on the production side because I know it's something I want in my portfolio. So it's sort of like a dance and a negotiation with every different person.
And on to touch on that, I've been writing notes because one, on that note, I always say, how bad do you want it? So if the pay is crap, but you really want it and you know it's going to be good for your
Right.
reel or good for your education or good for who you're working with, whatever it is, sometimes you'll just take the crap pay. But one way I come up with when you're a new filmmaker, like, or you're like new to asking for money, one thing I tell you to do is budget out your whole month. How much money do you need to make in a month? Now, let's say you need $2,500 to make all of your bills and have some food at the end of the month. Okay, the project you're taking on is going to take up 5 days. That's a week, right? So 2,500 divided by 5, that's your weekly rate, and you will not work for less than that because you need to make that much per week. It's not exact science, but it is a way for you to kind of figure out what your time is worth or what you need to do in that time. If it's just like you're going to film some dentists and you don't really care about it, but you need the money, what is it worth? What would you do it for? And you also can start charging more as you go, which is nice. Like the first time you're scared. I had a working director student who the first time she only asked for 5,000 for something. And then I was like, you need to ask twice that. And she got it the second time. But it's just, you got to get paid for anything. Get paid the $200 check so you can be okay. You got to get comfortable getting paid. I think that's the thing.
Right. And like budgets in film production are so different than like budgets other places in life sometimes. And so asking for money in that context feels different than talking about like my rent or my grocery budget. You know what I mean? So you just
Yeah.
have to get comfortable talking about really big numbers, and you have to be
Well,
confident enough to know that you can handle those big numbers on your project because you're going to manage those budget numbers well.
and that's the thing I was going to say too. When it comes to the money, a lot of times you talk to these people who you're going to say the small business, and they say, yes, I totally want to do a video. How much would it cost? You can't don't throw out a number. Just say, we can do things on different budgets, but let's understand what you need. Because if they just want like them sitting in a chair talking about the store, maybe you can do that with you and a camera and $200. But if they want this whole thing with coverage and a storyline and all this stuff, and you can show them proposals, you can show them why the money costs a certain way, because not most people do not understand film budgets. You could tell someone like, the film I just shot was $15,000 for one day, and someone would go, oh my God, that's so much money. But in the real world, that's not near enough money for one day. So it's just a matter of making people understand this is what people get paid. Here's you gotta help them along the way sometimes.
Mhm.
Okay, we are out of time, but I'm going to get to these really brief answers on these. So, just wrote and directed a long form PSA for a nonprofit that I work at. Would like to go out for more gigs in the nonprofit space. Yes, you should start with friends who work in that sector. And I'm assuming this isn't Dorothy, because Dorothy is a working director, phenomenon. I love her. She worked with us. And Dorothy did a PSA. She won a contest, so she got to do a video that she was paid for was a PSA. And then she basically was able to go back to them and say, what would you want to do for more? And then she got to ask for actual money and actual budget. It's definitely easier if you have that, but she's been having luck going to these nonprofits. She goes and she's filming speakers now and getting money. Like basically, yeah, if you have something already and you can show you understand their world, that's like, I think Katie's been saying all along, if I can show I understand their world and I can tell this story, it's easier to get them to say yes. So even if you don't know anybody else in the nonprofit, you can go to other nonprofits with, I did this video for the nonprofit. It was very successful. Here's why it was successful, yada, yada. Katie, I don't know if you have anything to add on to that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like my Emmy nominated project this year was a documentary, Chicago Emmy nominated project this year. I was nominated for directing, which was really cool. My first nomination. And award ceremonies are really boring, by the way. Uh, with that project, I did that with Porchlight, and then it was like because we got the nomination for it, and because they saw the audience response from the video the first time around, we got like messages from people who came to see the show saying like the video enhanced the experience so much. The positive response meant that we got to do the next documentary series about the next musical that they did. So it's like doing good work begets good work.
Mm-hmm. And Monique, that was you. There's no reason you shouldn't know Dorothy. Make sure you email me. I'm going to connect you guys because you can chat about how she's doing it. I won't read this very long thing, but basically, and also if you guys are in the Facebook groups, for some reason it doesn't tell us your name. So if you could just say who you are, because we love to know who's talking to us. But there's a whole thing about a lot of disappointments because there's verbal promises that didn't get followed through on. And she said, does this happen a lot? And I say, it happens every time you don't get it in writing. Like everything's in writing from minute one. I don't care if they're your best friend. I don't care if it's your mom. Everything is in writing from the minute you're moving forward. And I'm sure Katie has horror stories of her past not doing that as well. But I mean, if you don't need to throw on, but contracts in writing. Verbal means nothing.
Oh yeah. People who know me know what I'm thinking about with my eyes real big reading this comment. Like this happens all the time. Yeah, you just have to protect yourself. Like Christopher Diaz was my playwriting mentor. He is working on the book for the Alicia Keys musical that's coming to Broadway this year. He's like an incredible playwright. And he told me that in this business, you have to be like Jay-Z. You have to be like a business-minded person. You can't just be a creative. And especially for directors, like even more so than when I was an actor, even more so than I was a playwright, like I feel like I need an MBA some days in this business because it's like, yeah, you got to get it in writing. You got to do your taxes. You got to know the business side of things.
Understand how to do production budgets.
You don't get to be the great creative unless you have the business side like locked down.
Yes. And you will get hired more as a director if you understand the business side. Even if you have a line producer who's phenomenal and doing all the budget stuff, the fact that you understand how budgets work and that you're asking for things within your budget and you're not being a whiny person who wants more than your budget is going to get you hired more and more as well. But yes, everything needs to be in writing. I feel like we've been talking like this because there's so much to talk about and not enough time.
Right.
We are so out of time, but you guys have been great. Thank you for staying tuned and asking such great questions. Katie, thank you for amazing answers. And yes, everybody, I will be trying to, finesse her into this 2-day boot camp for us. So we'll see what happens. Keep it on the newsletter to see if we can get her into that. And follow her on TikTok in the meantime and learn from that. And okay, we're now on this new thing. Let me see if I can figure out how to get us out of here. Bye.